Hi everyone, welcome to Module 5 video on immigration. At the end of this video, I'm going to be discussing some administrative issues related to the quizzes and assignments. So watch the video till the end so that you can find out a little bit more about the administrative issues. So for today, we're going to be reflecting a little bit more in depth about immigration and how Latinas and Latinos experience immigration and kind of like the political aspects of immigration, right? And I think in previous videos I have stated how um, our experiences as Latina immigrants will vary based on the country of origin of our families' experience with migration, and also our own experiences with migration, right? Again, Latinos, we are a heterogeneous group. We come from a diverse set of countries, all with their own cultural identity. And on top of that, we have other factors that influence us, such as our sexual orientation, gender, religious orientation, ethnicity, and so forth and so forth. So those aspects, things, variables also play a role in how we experience migration, right? And I think I've given the example that for me as a Puerto Rican Latina is very different than the experience of other Latinos or Latinas that are migrating based on political factors, right? We are part of the US, we are citizens of the US, so we are allowed to come and go in and out of the US as we want. That doesn't mean, while that may alleviate some things, that Puerto Ricans do not experience oppression, exclusion, segregation, or hostility based on their identity. What it means is that our experience with the US culture might be a little bit different than the experience of other Latinos and Latinas. And again, within the Puerto Rican group, this experience will also vary based on your socioeconomic background, gender, ethnicity, your religious group, and so forth, so forth. So no migration experience is the same, right? They're very unique based on how all those factors come together and align together. I think for uh, immigrants that come from other countries, right, that don't necessarily have a relationship with the US, like Puerto Rico, there is the factor as the reading from, I think it was Delgado and Bernal, Delgado Bernal, Aleman, and Flores. This is a transnational, transgenerational reading. As they suggest, this is further complicated by legal issues, right? Another factor that influences your migration experiences is whether or not you are legal or not legal in this country, right? Because that will determine accessibility to services and things that are needed for your survival and well being. So, that is another layer or another component that complicates how we experience migration. So, how this kind of all looks in practice and as we relate with our clients. Oftentimes, we neglect or we avoid asking difficult questions, and I have already related this to you in another video. We kind of avoid the religious, the political questions, but I think those are very necessary, particularly questions about migration histories, because of the unique factor that I've been talking about, right? It's not the same when you were born in the US and your family was raised in a different country than when your parents were born in the US, you were born in the US, and it was just your abuelas, abuelos, grandparents that came from the US. That's also very different from people that migrated in early childhood, but they were born in another country. And that's also very different from people that migrated later in life, like during adolescence or their adult years. So it's very important to kind of see where your client is in terms of their migration histories. and ask questions about how they how they have adapted to the US culture, how they have preserved their Latino culture, if they have been interested, if it's important for them to preserve those Latino values. How much do their values and beliefs relate to their family's values and beliefs? And this is really crucial because you may be aware that Latinas have among the highest suicide rates in the US, and that's related to the fact, or one of the factors is the clashes between values among second, third generation Latinos and first generation Latinos, in the sense that they are like Latino adolescents or younger Latino generations are balancing adapting or feeling part of the US culture while also receiving messages from their family members about preserving and respecting their Latino values and culture. So it creates a friction, and that leads to stress. And stress is associated with anxiety, depression, self esteem problems, and other mental health issues. So I think that's very important that you kind of inquire to your clients about how their values and beliefs vary from their family's values and beliefs, and what role does culture plays in all this. How has migration kind of like impacted the services and rights that they have or that they have access to, and how has it been a challenge or limited that? And sometimes you're working with families, and within a family, a single family unit, you're going to have different migration stories and experiences, and that experiences might be also fueling some of the conflicts that your clients are manifesting. I think one example that I can think of was a client of mine. She was Dominican, and she pretty much had moved from the Dominican Republic around age 5 or 6. Her dad was from the Dominican Republic, but later came. Her mother was the one who stayed with her in the US. And it was very hard when she became a teenager for her mom to understand how other teenagers in the US context behave. And they had a lot of clashes, to the point that the mother would kind of devalue her daughter, would kind of shame her or embarrass her for not adhering or following her Dominican values or Dominican beliefs. And that created a lot of uncomfortability and friction between that mother and that daughter. So clearly their experiences of migration and how they interpreted were very different. So I would encourage you to explore aspects of migration with your clients, right? Because there's more so than the emotional impact, there's also the issue of accessibility and making sure that your clients are accessing the things that they have a right to access, and just understanding the legal ramifications and the legal language is very important for yourself to get educated and about what are the rights of immigrants, regardless of considering their legal status, and what they are entitled to, and what basic rights do they have. It's very important to familiarize yourself with that when you're working with particularly families or adults that some might be illegal immigrants while others were born or have residency or are living legally in the US. And I think the other reading touched upon another stressor, which is the issue of translating, right? Which is also part of that adaptation into the US culture, and interpreting and translating to the family members that don't necessarily speak English. So it seems to me that migration also adds a burden or a layer of responsibility for some children and adolescents, because they kind of have to broker relationships between adults and folks that don't speak the Spanish language, that only speak English. So they have to broker these relationships, and it adds a responsibility that it's often associated with adults. So migration kind of changes the family landscape, as children and adolescents probably had to engage in tasks that are commonly left for adults. So that's all I wanted to kind of reflect on today. I'm going to take 2 or 3 minutes to address some aspects of the quizzes and the assignments. So pretty much in the first two quizzes, everyone did pretty great. A lot of the students got A's and B's, but I'm noticing in the third quiz, you guys didn't do that well. And I'm still waiting for about 10 students to submit their responses. But I already scanned the quiz and I noticed there were two questions. I will not talk about them today because students are still sending responses. But there were two questions that people consistently got wrong. So I took the kind of time to check whether it was me or whether, in fact, students answered incorrectly. So the two questions, I was really surprised because the answer was pretty obvious in the readings. I don't know if maybe the ways you guys interpreted, or maybe you kind of read it too quickly, but I answered to you. Take a look at your quiz. The two questions that are the questions that I'm kind of like noticing more difficulty, I provided you like kind of like a longer explanation of what the response really was, and both responses appear exactly like that in the readings, right? But I'll discuss a little bit more because I think it's important to help you clarify those concepts. And then what I'm going to do for the following quizzes, I'm already seeing that some of you are answering quiz number 4, and I'm already seeing a little bit of better grades. So I think it was that this quiz might have been a little bit harder on you guys. But some tips for future quizzes. You know that I kind of give definitions sometimes, so I would recommend that you highlight all the definitions. Like, for example, in the immigration quizzes, like I give there's definitions on cultural citizenship. So you might want to highlight what that means, right? And then questions about whether Latinos identify as one way or another. So those are questions that kind of appear in the readings. Some of them do not appear explicitly, but it's because I want to kind of see your thought process. So they're application questions, right? You want to see that the student understood the concept and is able to apply the concept. Some are just definitions. So I would recommend for the quiz, I think it's quiz number 5, I would recommend that you take a look at not only the readings for this week, right? The readings for module 5. I want to make sure that I'm in the right quiz. Hold it a second. Module 5. Yes, so for module 5, which is quiz number 4, do you remember last week's reading that it was like the Census Bureau? It had like 2 or 3 pages. It's the one on let's see. Yeah. The Taylor, Lopez, Martinez, and Velasco. It has a lot of facts about Latino. Oh my God, sorry, I have allergy. Sorry. It has a lot of facts about how Latinos define themselves and how many Latinos are here and there. So I would recommend kind of taking a look at that article. Again, it's the Taylor, Lopez, Martinez, and Velasco, and you're going to find it in module 4. And just take a look at the little numbers, at the definitions, because a lot of the times they are explicitly stated in the reading. So take a look at that carefully. And then I'm already seeing that you're doing much better in quiz number 4. I'm sorry, quiz number 5. So maybe it was that quiz number 4 was particularly difficult. But I'll discuss the question at hand, the 2 questions next week after everyone has submitted. I'm also going to be, remember you have until September 22nd to submit your reflection paper number 1. I'll start grading those as they come in. And then finally, if you feel you're getting anxious or you're struggling in the quizzes, don't stay quiet. Write me an email, and I would recommend to either schedule a phone conversation or an in person meeting with me, and I'll be happy to support you and help you figure out what we can do to help you improve. So I'll see you again next week and next video, and hopefully next week I'm going to start grading some of your reflections, and then I'm going to have a better idea of where you are in terms of your grade in the class. So take care and have a beautiful week.